Many members of the other party believe that prosperity comes from the top down, so that if we spend trillions more on tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, that will somehow unleash jobs and economic growth. I disagree. I think they're wrong.
There's President Barack Obama taking one of his first jobs on the tax issue as the presidential election heats up. Welcome to the News Hub, everyone. I'm Dennis Berman. It's a sweltering July afternoon here in New York City. We get right to President Barack Obama's discussion of tax policy today. Laura Meckler, joining us from Washington, D.C., is here to tell us. Laura, tell us, is this politics? Is this policy? Where do the lines begin and end in the speech today?
Well, I think it's very much policy and politics. It's long been President Obama's position that the tax rates for the Bush-era tax rates for families earning $250,000 a year should return to their old levels. So taxes should go up for these upper-income families, and the lower rates should be renewed for lower income families below that $250,000 threshold. So that's been his policy for a long time. The Obama campaign believes that also is good politics for them, and that's why we see him making an issue of it today. He's out there calling on Congress to, hey, let's do what we all can agree on. Let's extend them for these middle income earners for a year and give them some certainty, which sounds like, okay, it's just a policy proposal, but he knows it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere in Congress right now. So really this is about defining the differences between his own policy and that of his Republican challenger, Mitt Romney.
Now, Laura, the Republicans had a retort. They view this as a tax increase because, of course, lost in his suggestion that those middle-class tax increases be extended. Of course, the implication is that they be raised for those of higher incomes. And there, in fact, is the response on the screen. I don't think you can see it there, Laura, but our viewers can. John Boehner rebuffs Obama. You see him asleep at the switch. The president is doubling down on his quixotic call for the same small business tax hikes that have been routinely rejected by the House and Senate. Fancy word there, quixotic. Would you agree with that?
He gets extra credit for using a fancy word, but it is true, and I think Obama would admit it as without much hesitation that he does want taxes to go up on upper income families. He's very clear about the fact that you can't. He thinks that the country can't afford those upper income tax cuts right now. So yes, there's no question that this includes both a further tax cut, or in other words, a maintaining of the current lower rates for many people, and for the upper income people, a tax increase. Although sort of embedded in his statement, you'll notice is something that Republicans talk a lot about, which is small business. They like to emphasize it and call this an increase in taxes on small businesses. And there are some small businesses who are affected, small businesses who have incomes, who use file in a certain way, so the taxes are filed through their personal income taxes, and they do have income over $250,000. Many small businesses, the vast majority, do not meet that threshold, about 97% according to the White House. But if you listen to Republicans, it'll be hard to find one today who doesn't mention small businesses when opposing this proposal.
Now, Laura, if you listen to the rhetoric on both sides here, it's almost as if they're talking literally a different language, a language of code, a language of loaded words, a language of similes and threats. All this seems to be a real walk-up to what is the real debate, the post-election debate on tax policy in this country. You're in Washington. You've covered Washington for a long time. Do we see any chance of a compromise after that election?
Well, there's going to have to be some sort of resolution, no doubt about it, at the end of this year. At the end of this year, we have the so-called fiscal cliff, where we're going to have a bunch of stuff happen all at once. We're going to have these Bush-era tax cuts are going to be set to expire for everybody, and nobody wants them to expire for everybody. You're also going to have some automatic spending cuts set to kick in. And at the same time, remember the debt ceiling? Well, it's going to need to be raised again. So you have all three of those things happening at roughly the same time. And there will have to be some sort of compromise ultimately, but really the chances of any of this being resolved before November, before people know what the outcome of the election is, I wouldn't count on it. I wouldn't be sitting by your C-SPAN waiting for a resolution on that one.
So then why is President Obama, and in turn the Republicans, why are we having this debate? In fact, perhaps the question is, why are we talking about it if it's just theater? Is there anything really substantive here that speaks to where the election is heading, or how the American
Yes.
people might actually vote on it.
It actually is very important. This is two very different visions for how they would want to take the country and where they would take fiscal policy for the country. So this is something that's important for voters to think about. Do they like the Obama approach, which we spoke about earlier, or the Romney approach, which we also talked a little bit about? And that's what this election, in large part, not totally, but in large part, is going to be about. Which vision speaks to you? So that's what what today's event is mostly about. It's about President Obama going out and defining the debate on his terms and trying to essentially set it up that way for voters who are still trying to make up their minds. The small number of voters who live in important states who don't know who they're going to be voting for, those are important people in this election, and that's who they're speaking to.
Now, Laura, you defined the issue so well there, and I think you put it well, that President Obama was defining the debate on his terms. Republicans have been very critical of late of Mitt Romney and his ability to essentially make the attack against President Obama. What exactly is Mitt Romney saying about taxes right now?
He's saying that now is not the time to raise taxes on anybody. That essentially you're just going to kill jobs if you raise them, and that Obama's approach to the economy, which includes his approach to taxes, hasn't worked. So that's, Romney's core argument is there aren't enough jobs. There hasn't been enough job creation. The economy is stalling. It's Obama's fault. And here we have another example of him trying to essentially squash the nascent recovery by increasing taxes. So that would be his argument.